So today's daf is daf Chof Vav and Avodah Zarah. We learn for Chanukah by Yisrael and Asun Batzar B'Shivya. Says the Mishnah on the page near the top of the page. Bas Yisrael lo tiyalet es haberes kochavim. A Jewish girl should not deliver the child of a avodas kochavim, of an akum, of avodah zarah. Neshmi let us ben avodas kochavim, because you are delivering a child who's going to worship avodah zarah, and therefore be machal shem shamayim. So don't do it. We'll see if you could do it for money. Certainly you can't do it for free. That's for sure not. Pardon?
Maybe the avodas kochavim is going to do tshuva.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but here we're talking about a goy. We're not talking about a mummer. We'll talk about a mummer later on. Not about a Jewish person. Maybe, but we assume you go with the majority. The assumption is if the mother's on avodas kochavim, they'll raise the child that way as well. But a non-Jewish woman, a goyish woman, or an akum even, we're talking about, certainly can deliver a Jewish child. We'll talk about that. There's another opinion, but that's the halacha. Similarly, a Jewish woman should not nurse the child of his kavim, because it's going to raise him, and you're helping him to do avodah zarah. But the other way they can do. A non-Jewish woman can nurse a Jewish child. That means to say, if you don't have a Jewish woman, if the mother can't do it herself, and you don't have a Jewish woman, they didn't have Similac and formulas in those days, and the child's life could be at risk. So then you could use avodas kochavim there to the child, even though avodas kochavim is like a animal tamea. You can't, pig's milk or horse milk or whatever is no good, right? You can't drink. It's not kosher, but for the life of the child, we have to we certainly give him milk, even if it's not kosher. Okay, so here the point is that everybody seems to agree that a Jewish woman cannot deliver an akum child, nor can he nurse him. Tana Rabbanan, we'll see a machlokas here. Yes, Jewish woman should not deliver a non-Jewish child. Again, we say non-Jewish, we mean here an avodah zarah. It doesn't necessarily mean today when in the Western world, they're not really over the avodas kochavim. But Bas Yisrael says should not deliver a non-Jewish child. Meir disagrees with our Mishnah. Meir says you should not use a shiksa, an akum, to deliver a Jewish child, because they're suspected of murder. They might murder the baby. If there are other Jewish women standing there, making sure that the shiksa does not kill the child, then it's okay. You're right. In private, he agrees with the mayor. If it's just a non-Jewish woman delivering a Jewish child, you have to be concerned. Maybe she'll kill the child. But if there are other people, if there are other Jewish women there who can stand and observe, then she'll be afraid to do it. For a mayor Omer, even if there's Jewish women standing there, namilo, still can't use a non-Jewish woman to deliver the child as a midwife. Because maybe she will surreptitiously put her hand on the baby's temple, but and kill it, where the baby's head is very soft. Kill the baby, but it won't appear that way. In other words, she'll just say, "Oh, the baby died." She can easily kill the baby without other people seeing it. So Meir says, not like our Mishnah, Meir says that you can never use a non-Jewish woman to deliver a Jewish child. Again, non-Jewish doesn't mean today's non-Jewish necessarily, but it means an avodas kochavim. And you never can. But the Rabbanan say you can if there's Jewish women standing there. So here, Rav Meir brought a proof to his point that you never can tell. You never can tell. They can kill Jewish babies without you realizing. He is a woman to Omer Lachaberta. A shiksa told her friend, "Oh, she was cursing her. She says, Moldel you daisa basmas. You are a midwife for Jewish women, the daughter of a midwife for Jewish women." She was cursing her. You're midwiving Jewish women. You're giving birth. Helping them give birth. You're helping the Jews. Omer La. She answered her. So the other one, who was accused, answered her, Nefishin bishta da'isa. You should have as many evil things, bad things happen to you to come ashpilna minayu dama ki ufidenhara. If you would know how much blood I have spilt of these Jewish babies. In other words, you're accusing me of midwifing them, but I've killed many of them. That's what she said. You should have as many troubles for cursing me. You should have as many troubles as the amount of blood that I've spilled. How much have I spilled? Ki ufi denara, like the foam, like in a flowing river, the foam or the froth that comes up. That's how many I've killed. That's how she answered him. So you see, Rav Meir said that many they can kill many times. They can kill Jewish children without you realizing it. Rabbanan will tell Rav Meir, no. Lohi, it's not true, but Milsa Bialmi do Kamasa. She didn't really kill those, and she was just answering. You're just giving her an answer. Oh, you're telling me I'm helping the Jews. I've killed many of them, but the truth is she didn't kill them. So that's how the Rabbanan will answer it. If there were Jewish women standing there, it's okay. Basra Lotonic, also, you shouldn't nurse an Akum child. Tan Rabbanan, Basra Lotonic Benashavas Kachavim, Neshmagalas Ben Lavs Kachavim. Again, you're raising a child for Avodah Zarah. Avodah Kachavim Lotonic gets Bena. This is again Rav Meir Shita. Not like our Mishnah. Says an Akum should not nurse a Jewish child as because she's suspected of killing. She might kill the child as she's nursing him. Divrei Meir. A non-Jewish woman can nurse a Jewish child. What other people are standing there. So people are standing there, she'll be afraid to kill them. But not privately. Now, there's a chum in both cases, whether it's delivering or nursing, chum safe. There's other people standing there, it's okay. But if it's just the two of them, not good. But Meir Omer, even if Jewish women are standing there and observing the nursing, just like observing the delivery, namilo, why tezim the shaifel sama ladad mavroi? Because maybe before she comes into the Jewish home to nurse the baby, she will smear her breast with some poison. And you won't know about it. She'll smear something on there, and the child will die because of swallowing the poison. So Rav Meir's got a good point there. But Sricha, now we have to tell you both cases. Rav Meir and the Chum argue both about the delivery and about the nursing. Why have in both cases? If you tell me the case of birthing, of delivering the baby, Beikam Rabban the Shari, the other rabbis might agree. They might say, okay, the other rabbis say you're not agree with it. They will say it's allowed. You're allowed to use a non-Jewish midwife. The lo efsher, right? The lo efsher mishum that it's the shari the lo efsher mishum dacheres roas osa. Because if the other Jewish women are standing there, it's impossible for it to kill the baby. Ava manika. But in the case of nursing a baby, if the shiksa is nursing the baby, the efsher the shaifel asam ladad mavroi, because she could smear her breast with some poison outside the house before she comes in. But Kadlain, she'll kill him. Maybe they should murder. That's a stronger point Rav Meir has when it comes to nursing. It's easy for the shiksa to kill the baby. So maybe you say the Rabbanan are motor there. Kamashmal, no, the Rabbanan say that if there's other Jewish women there, they'll make sure they'll use a wet wipe or something to wipe off the breast before, and make sure that she doesn't poison the baby. If you tell me the case of nursing, Rav Meir says, no, never have a shiksa nurse. Again, because she might smear the breast with poison, but kill the baby. Because but Meletis, when she's delivering the baby, if there's Jewish women standing there, it's impossible for her. If other people are standing, other Jewish women are standing there, and I may think that they're murdered to Rabbanan. That if other Jewish women are standing there, you could use a shikha to deliver the baby. Kamashmo and Sricha, that you need both cases. They argue in both cases. Obviously, we go like the Rabbanan, like our Mishnah mentioned, that if there's other people standing there, you can use them. For a minute. Now, what we say, everybody agrees though, that a Jewish woman should not deliver a non-Jewish child. For a minute, Yehudis mialetis of his beschar. If you pay her for money, you could deliver a non-Jewish child. You say you shouldn't do it for free because you shouldn't help them for free. You're megadol a child for avodas kachavim. But if you're paid, you see you could. Avalo b'chinam, not for free, but you could do it for free. So how does our Mishnah say you're not allowed to? Rav Yosef beschar shari mishum eva ein achanami. If you pay them, and as if you live among goyim, and you refuse to deliver their child, even though they're willing to pay you, that's going to cause bad feeling, cause more troubles between the Jews and the goyim. So because of good feeling, if they want to pay you, you can do it. Now, our Mishnah is speaking about where they don't pay you for free. For free, you don't deliver. Who works for free anyway today, right? But the Mishnah is speaking about for free, you shouldn't deliver a non-Jewish child. Sorry, Lememer. Can you deliver a non-Jewish child on Shabbos for payment? Mishumeva, because the same thing, because of, if you don't deliver, you don't want to work on Shabbos. You deliver Jewish children on Shabbos, Why can't you deliver mine too? So he said, maybe you should be matter if they're being paid. Again, no, for no pay, you don't have to, but for pay, you should, can you deliver a non-Jewish child on Shabbos where there's some chil Shabbos involved? Could you do that if they pay you? Amalei Abaye, no. The Jewish midwife who the non-Jewish woman is trying to hire can say, listen, our own Jews show Dimitri Shabbos, so we who observe Shabbos, because we observe Shabbos, we can be Machal Shabbos for them, because basically we're talking about Shabbos observers. The Tud Lo Mintu Shabbos, but you don't observe Shabbos, Lo Machalina. We're not allowed to violate Shabbos for people who don't keep Shabbos anyway. And therefore, she has a good excuse. Again, the reason why you're allowed to work for them, even for payment, is only because of Ava. But if you have a pretext, you have an excuse, then so Abaye said, no, you don't have to work for them on Shabbos, because you could say we're only Machal Shabbos for people who basically observe Shabbos. Another thing Rav wanted to say, Anuki b'schar shari mishemeva, you're allowed to nurse them for payment because of bad feeling. If this woman is known to be a wet nurse and the shiksa wants to hire her, and you have to do it because of Ava, because otherwise there'll be bad feeling. Amalei Abaye said no. You could easily have an excuse. Yochel Meimar, she can give an excuse and say, I can't nurse your baby. If the Jewish woman is not married, I'd like to get married. This can hurt my chances. Maybe it hurts her chances of getting pregnant or something. He says, I want to get married. I don't want to be degraded in front of my husband. In other words, apparently, if you're serving as a wet nurse, that may hurt the relationship with her husband if she's nursing for somebody else, or if she's single, it might hurt her chances of getting married. Women usually who are nursing cannot get pregnant. Usually, I think that's one of the reasons. I'm not sure what the reason is over here. If it's simply because of that her husband or her potential husband might find her repulsive if she's using her breasts to nurse other children. So you have an excuse. May not be the best excuse, but it's an excuse. So since you can have an excuse, you say, no, you don't have to nurse Goyish children even for payment, because you can give such a good excuse. Savra Rabbi Yosef Rav Meir Shapiro wanted to say, we learned that a brayso we've had many times, that a goy or ro'oi be'emedaka, which are ganovim, lo malim v'lo merid, you're not allowed to kill them. You can't throw them into a pit to kill them. But if they're in a pit, you're not mechuyev to save them, because these are evil people, right? You don't have to. Asuke b'schar shari. Okay, maybe you don't have to take them out of the pit if they're in a pit. Now, you don't have to save them, but maybe for payment, you do have to save them. If they're willing to pay, mishumeva. Listen, I'm willing to pay you. Help me get out of here. I'll pay you. Abaye said again, the same thing. He can have excuse. Yochel can say, listen, koi bri aigra. My son is on the roof. I have to run right now. I got an emergency call. I got to get him down from the roof before he falls off. So I'm sorry, I can't help you right now, even if you want to pay me. Inami nekita lezimna lebeidavar. I've got a court appearance due right now. I've been subpoenaed. It's 1:00. I got to get there right away. In other words, you can make up an excuse to get out of saving this person. Tani Rabavu Kamed Rabbi Yochanan Avicham Medaka. This idea that you say that of the Avodah Zarah and crooks, even Jewish crooks, shepherds who steal from other people, they graze on other people's land. Lo malin v'lo moridin, right? Them, you're not allowed. You don't have to save them. Nor lo malin means you don't have to save them. You can let them die there. It's not your job to save them. You can always have an excuse, but you certainly don't have to kill them. Avol, but other people, haminin. We'll see what a min is. What is a min? In general, Rashi says right away that it's a chomer l'ras kechavim. It's a real idol worshiper or a priest for idols. We'll see. There's different opinion what min is. Bal Masoros and informers, Jewish informers. Bal Murmum, Jewish apostates. You actually kill them. These people deserve to be killed. That's what Rabbi Yosef wanted to say. Amalei, Ani Shona, I learned. And that is again, Abaye said, right? Amalei, I assume it's the same Amalei, so Rabbi Yosef and Meimer, because it's always Abaye answering. He doesn't say Abaye, but I think it's Amalei Abaye, presumably. Abaye said, Ani Shona, I learned. You have to save anything of your brother, your fellow that he lost, right? Is a mitzvah. L'rabos is a mummer, to save the mummer, even the Jewish apostate, you have to save him. Like you say, maybe he'll do tshuva. You have to save him as well. Anything that he lost himself, he lost his life, is also something that he lost, and a Jewish mummer is still a Jew. Yeah, Yisrael afal pi shechata Yisraelhu. You say you can kill him? It's one thing, an informer. An informer is killing other people, informing on the Jews to the other with lies. Rashi says, they're telling where their money is and killing Jews. Fine, those people I can understand. You should kill them. But what about a mummer? Maybe you should save him. Not that you don't have to save him, Mela, but that you can kill him. So Sami Mikan mummer. So he says, all right, take away mummer. A mummer you can't kill. You have to try to, be machzer and b'tshuva, right? You certainly can't kill him. So Velishne, why don't you make a simple difference? Why do you say that you have to erase the word mummer? Because Rabbi Yosef said, you could actually kill them, throw them into the pit. Why doesn't he give a simple answer? It's two kinds of apostates. One is simply because his taivig has the best of him. He enjoys eating ham, right? So he enjoys eating ham. He doesn't really mean to go against God, but he just can't control himself. He has a strong appetite. But if he does it to provoke, just to make, so to speak, to make the rabbis angry, to make God angry, that's somebody that you shouldn't say. Why don't you give that answer and say, okay, is a person, he's off the derech, he's eating because he likes ham or whatever. He likes non-kosher food. But a guy who does it lahachas, maybe he may actually kill. The answer is ksavar, ochel neveos lahachas minu, and that is a min. Ochel neveos lahachas is a min, and that was the first thing we said at the top of the page. Aminin v'amasoros v'amumrim. A min is actually a person who eats neveos lahachas. That is exactly even a Jewish person who eats it lahachas. A goyish person doesn't have to, is allowed to eat nevelos, right? Ochel neveos lahachas, that's actually a min. So you can't say, you're talking about this kind of a min or a mum. You can't say a mummer you could kill as well as min and masoros, because if you say that a min is actually an ochel nevelos lahachas, so if mumrim is ochel nevelos l'te'avin, why would you kill him? So that's not a good answer. Better just to remove the word mummer from that memra. Itmar, mummer, an apostate, Jewish apostate. Pligi bo ravacha ravina, machlokes rach and ravina, charam l'te'avin mummer. If he eats it for his appetite, meaning he just can't control himself, he just loves non-kosher food, so he is a mummer. Lahachas, if he does lahachas, minhava, he's a min, like we just said at the top. In other words, what is the definition of a min? Usually we confuse that or we exchange that with an apikoros, right? What does that mean? The word is apikoros is like hefker, he's making himself hefker. What does it mean? So what is a min? Is it similar to an apikoros? Apikoros might do these things too. But he says that a mummer lahachas is a min. Even if he does it to provoke the rabbis, to provoke God, he's also considered an apostate. What's a min? Means he does avodah zarah, like Rashi on the top of the page said, he worships avodah zarah, whether he's a Jew or a non-Jew. Either way, he's a min. So a min could be a Jew or a non-Jew. We generally think of an apikoros as a Jew who, so to speak, went off the derech. Meisvei. So we're saying now that if you do it l'teyavon, you're only a mumar. If you do it lahaches, you're a min. Meisvei, that's the first opinion. Meisvei, let's say a person ate a flea, or a mosquito. Haray's a mumar. He's a mumar. Now, we call that a mumar. Why would you eat a flea if it's not lahachas? You're not eating it because it's delicious. You're eating it because you're doing it lahachas. You see that you're a mumar, you're not a min. The second opinion was that even if you did a lahachas, you're also a mumar. Here you see where you ate a flea or a mosquito. Who would eat a mosquito? Must be that you're doing it lahachas. And you say you're a mumar. They say there's a mumar, not a min. Baktani mumar. The answer was Hasan boy lemetim tamid sur. He wants to know what it tastes like. So there he's not doing it lahachas. He's doing it because he'd like to know what non-kosher fleas, non-kosher flies, what do they taste like? So therefore you could say it's also he's only doing it l'te'avon. Omar Mar, Hayma they used to, again, minin or masoros or mamumran, they would actually throw them down into the pit. Avalo malin, but they wouldn't take them out. Now, isn't that seem to be redundant? Hashda achusim machsin. If you throw them into the pit, asukimi boys, is there any question that you don't have to take them out? And as if you say you're allowed to kill these people are condemned people because of what they've done. They deserve to die. So you could throw them into the pit. So it says you throw them into the pit and you don't take them out. You don't throw them into the pit. And if they're in a pit, you don't have to take them out. Isn't it obvious? If you could throw them in, you certainly don't have to take them out. Boy, is there any question you can't bring them out? Look, what you need it for, I'll tell you why you need it for. Let's say one of these people, let's say an informer, is in the pit, and there's a step in the pit with which he can step out and get himself out. Megara, you can scrape away the step, right? The Nakalila, because you can have an excuse, you could have a pretext to say, Amar, Lo techas chayusa, I don't want my animals to fall into the pit, right? If there's a step there, the animals might decide to walk into the pit and go down there, and they'll die. So because of that, I'm allowed to do it. So that's what he means. Asuke, not only can you throw him in, but you don't have to take out, meaning you can prevent the person in the pit from coming out. That's really what it means. It's obvious means you don't want to help him out of the pit, but it means you can prevent him from coming out. Rashi says, he could have, let's say the goy or whoever it is, the moser is in the pit and he wants to get out, and he could get out. Meaning that you don't let him come out. You can prevent him from coming out by scraping away the step. And you have a pretext. I could say, is the guy going to be angry at me? Am I preventing him from getting out? No. I'm just preventing my animals from walking down in there, and they would go down there, and they'll die in the pit. They won't be able to get out. So that's one excuse. Rav Yosef Tamartabai, another excuse. Look, I'll tell you why. I mean, another way. Shema Isa Evan Alpi Habor, probably it's Habor. Alpi Habor. Let's say there was a rock on top of the bor. Mechasa. You can there's like on the side of the pit, whatever. Mechasa and near this, you can take a stone and put it on top of the pit, preventing him from going out. Amar, you could say, the reason I'm putting it here is Laburi Chiyusele. My animals are walking. I don't want them to fall in there. I need to put some cover on the pits. They shouldn't fall in there. Ravina Amar, a different kind of excuse. Shema Yasulam. Let's say there was a ladder in the pit, and the person in the pit could climb out. You could take away the ladder. Shema Yasulam Masaki, you can remove it. Amar Bin Lachuse Brimega. Again, I need the ladder to get my child off the roof. In other words, in all these cases, it means if these are people that you're allowed literally to throw into the pit, and I'm not sure that you actually could take a knife and kill them, but unless they're judged in court. But if you throw them into the pit, you're allowed to throw them into the pit, and it's tough luck. And you don't have to help him get out, even if he has a way to get out. And you can say, I'll pay you. You have an excuse. You have a pretext to say, no, I'm not able to help you because I'm afraid of my animals falling in or going down there, or I need the ladder that's in the pit. I need it for some other purpose to help my child.
What's the excuse for? Is it for yourself?
To prevent Ava. In other words, there's other goyim standing around there, right? There's other goyim standing around there, and they say, why don't you help him get out? He says, I can't help him get out. I'm more worried about I have to take care of my animal, I have to take care of my child, whatever it is. It's all to avoid the things of Ava. Rashi says it's against Ava. Yeah. To avoid the bad feeling that, say, listen, I'm willing to pay you. Yes, but I'm sorry, I'm not available right now.
So the assumption is that whoever is standing around, the guy who's standing around, will say, oh, you're worried about your animals. All right, let him die.
Right. You go help. Rashi says, the Nakale Ilav Amar Klomer, Islish Temute Maybe I can get around the excuse of bad feeling. Maybe I have an excuse. I have my priority. I'm not available right now. Happens a lot that people say, can you come and help me? I'll pay you. I'm not available.
Well, no, that's
yeah,
that's one thing, but somebody may die down there.
Yeah, well, it's
I'm worried about my animal who might fall in.
That's right. That's my animals take priority over you.
What's happening in New York? In New York, they don't help.
All right. Tanarabak. Yisrael molas avikachavim l'shum ger. A Yisrael, of course, can circumcise a goy l'shum ger if he wants to be megayer, right? One of the three things, if you're megayer, a man who's megayer, has to go to the mikveh. In the times of Beis Mikdash, he has to bring a carbon, and he has to have a milah. So you're allowed to do that. La puke l'shum morna delo. But let's say the goy has an infection, or a morna is like a worm or a parasite on the osamakam, you're not allowed to heal him for free. You don't heal him for free because you don't do that stuff. Rashi says, you can't heal him for free to help him. So if he's an avikachavim, okay, maybe you can't kill him directly. You throw him into the pit and let somebody else worry about him. But you don't help him for free. So here's a big issue. Can use a guy to do a bris milah? That's going to be the issue we're going to discuss now. So Rav Meir says, like Rav Meir was worried on Amar Aleph, both when it comes to nursing and delivery, don't use the shiksa because they might kill. Avikachavim also, he says, you cannot use a guy and Avikachavim to circumcise because he might kill you. Rav Meir, he's got the knife there, right? If other people are standing there, they can keep an eye on it, and you'll make sure that he won't kill him. But not privately. For Rav Meir Amar, even if people standing there, namilo, because he could simply tilt the knife, it's a chalif or whatever they called it, right? Like scalpel, right? What's the Hebrew word for it? The Gemara word. It escapes me right now. The zim the matzlile sakina, right? The ismil, right? The ismil, like ismil. Because he'll tilt the knife, and it'll make him a handicapped person. He'll cut off his penis and a severed penis, and therefore don't do it because even if people are standing there, he might accidentally on purpose cause a problem. Okay, so therefore you shouldn't use a guy to do a bris milah. So according to Rav Meir, does Rav Meir really say that a guy cannot do a milah for you? A city that doesn't have a Jewish shemuel happens a lot, right? There's cities that don't have a Jewish shemuel. You have a kuti. A kuti is a Samaritan who basically they are Jewish or half Jewish, whatever you want to call them. They're Jewish, but they don't keep all the mitzvahs, and some of them worship some sort of an idol. But there's also a goy there. Rav Meir says that better use a goy and not a kuti. Rashi explains why. Because the goy doesn't have a mitzvah of milah. Goyim don't generally do bris milah. So he's not going to do it l'shem avodas kachavim because their idol worshiping does not involve bris milah. Like our worship, we worship God, and that's part of the worshiping is we do avodah zarah. That's our bris, right? The goyim don't have that, so you can use. He's not going to do avodah zarah, but don't use a kuti because a kuti is going to do it for his idol on Har Gerizim over there, whatever that he's got. He worships a bird there and an idol. And he might do it for that, so that's worse. Rav Meir. But what do you see? You said before that Rav Meir holds that you can never use an avikachavim for bris milah because he might injure or kill the child. And even if there's people standing there, here you see Rav Meir says better to use a goy than to use a kuti. So mashbi you could use it. By the way, this shows you, Mepharshim say that if there's no Jewish moel, it's important to do the bris on the 8th day, no matter what. Don't wait for the father or don't wait for anybody. If that's all you have, that's all you have, right? As we'll see, we're going to have this machlokas. Does the meal have to be lishma or doesn't be lishma? Just make sure you cut it on the 8th day. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says the opposite. Use the kuti, not the avikachavim, right? But what do you see over here? We'll talk about Rabbi Yehuda in a minute. He says, don't you have a guy do it? But the point is, you see, Rav Meir holds you can use a guy. You could use a guy to do the bris milah. So the Gemara says, Eipach, we'll turn it around. Rav Meir Omi Imo Kuti v'Avikachavim. Better use a kuti, not Avikachavim, right? Because a guy you're afraid he's going to kill you or injure the child. Rabbi Yehuda says Avikachavim v'lo kuti. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says want to use a guy. Okay, that answers Rav Meir temporarily, right? Because Rav Meir says, yeah, better to use a kuti, don't use a guy. But Rabbi Yehuda says, use the guy and don't use the kuti because the guy doesn't do it l'avodah zarah and the kuti does. Saying more of a savar Rabbi Yehuda avikachavim shaper dummy. Does he really say Rabbi Yehuda holds that you could use a goy? But time Rabbi Yehuda Omer menayin lemila b'avikachavim. How do we know that min avichavim she psula? It's disqualified. You can't do bris milah with a goy. Shneimar says v'atas brisi tishmor. You, the Jewish people, you should guard my covenant. So what do you see here? Rabbi Yehuda holds that you can't use a goy. So now that we've turned it around and said what Rabbi Yehuda's one says use a guy, we got a different problem because Rabbi Yehuda says you shouldn't use a guy. So now we have a steer in Rabbi Yehuda. Let's go back. Don't turn it around. Rabbi Yehuda really says is the one who says don't use a guy. Rav Meir is the one who says you could use a guy, Even though we said before, Rav Meir holds, don't use a goy because he might kill you or sever the child's penis. Here we're speaking about an expert child, a professor. He's a professor of urology or whatever. He's a professor, and he's going to be afraid to ruin his reputation. If he messes up, he's going to lose all his trade. He's not going to do that. If he was an expert, that people knew this guy was an expert surgeon, then mutter, you're allowed to. Okay, so now we're saying that we went back at this point, we said, Rav Meir is the one who said, Rav Meir who originally said, never use a guy because he might kill you, or he might sever the child's penis, so don't use a guy. We said, we have a risa which says better use a guy than use the kuti. That's what Rav Meir said. That guy is speaking about where he's a mumcha l'rabim, so he won't have any, that's what it's speaking about in that case. A city that doesn't have a Jewish doctor or surgeon or moel, and it's got a guy who's a mumcha professor, and he's mumcha l'rabim, then you could use them. Says Gemara, okay, but sav Rabbi Yehuda kuti shaper dummy. Now we're going, and now remember we said before, we're not turning it around. We're leaving it the way it says. Rav Meir says better to use the guy. Rabbi Yehuda says better to use the kuti. Better to use the kuti, don't use a guy. So now the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda kuti shaper dummy. Rabbi Yehuda really holds that you could use a kuti. But time Yisrael molas a kuti. A Yisrael could circumcise a kuti, but kuti lo yomo, right? He has to get circumcised because they apparently hold a bris milah. They are Jewish. But kuti lo Yisrael, but a kuti should not circumcise Israel. Nay shamal l'shem hagrizim. He does it for the purpose of the mountain or the bird that's on the mountain, the idol. They're worshiping the idol. Shouldn't do it. Shouldn't use it. Div Rabbi Yehuda. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use the kuti. So now we have a steer in Rabbi Yehuda. Amal Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi said to Rabbi Yehuda, so what? What does that say? That's lishma. The main thing is cut it, right? The main thing is to do the bris properly. Whatever is the intention of the moil doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have to be lishma. Let him continue to be a moel. Let the kuti be a moel until he dies. In other words, let him let him until he dies. Meaning, even when he says you're allowed to do it, he's giving him a curse. The kuti who's doing it, l'shem hagrizim, let him die, but he can do bris as long as you want. So we have a steer now in Rabbi Yehuda. We solved the problem of Rav Meir apparently, but now we have a steer in Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda on one hand says a kuti could do it, and here he says a kuti can't do it because he doesn't do it lishma. Ela olam eipech kirvat pchina. Now we're going to go back and we're going to say let's turn it around like we turned it on originally. Rav Meir is the one who says use a kuti, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that use a goy and not a kuti. So if we turned it around, how did that answer Rav Meir? Because Rav Meir said that you can't use a goy, and then apparently Rav Meir said you could use a goy, better use a goy than a kuti. No, we're going to turn it around. That Rav Meir is the one who says that the kuti do not the goy, and Rabbi Yehuda says use the goy and not the kuti. Right? Why use the goy and not the kuti? Because the goy is not going to do it with the shem of avodah zarah because they don't have bris avodah zarah. But the kuti who has bris, like the Jews, they fearzach like Jews. They could do it with shem avodah zarah. Don't use that. So now we had a kasha of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda said before, what? Use the kuti and not use the goy. Rabbi Yehuda said right. Rabbi Yehuda said we're going to turn it around and say what? That Rav Meir says use the kuti. Rabbi Yehuda says use the avikov and not the kuti. Right? Ahid Rabbi Yehuda nasihi. It's a different Rabbi Yehuda. The time Rabbi Yehuda nasi omer m'nayin l'mil avikov sheep psula tamalamatas brisi tishmor. Okay, so now we have this. Now we're saying we had a steer in Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because on one hand, Rabbi Yehuda said, right, we're going back like we switched it around, and we said what? That Rav Meir holds use a kuti and don't use a goy because goys can kill the children, and we don't have to come on to the answer about the professor and all that because goyim generally don't use goyim for that. Rabbi Yehuda says use a goy, don't use a kuti, right? Don't use a kuti, and we said there's a steer in Rabbi Yehuda. Because on one hand he says you could, on one hand you can't. The answer is that really he holds you could use it. Rabbi Yehuda really says you could use a kuti, but the one who says you can't use it is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rashi says the pasuk mila savikachav migzeir sakasuv. right? He says you can't use a goy. Knows we see here that Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use a kuti, right? Because he's going to do l'shem avodah zarah. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. So we said, who could you use? You could use a goy. But before we had a steerer in Rabbi Yehuda before, a different steerer in Rabbi Yehuda. Before we had the steerer in Kuti and Kuti, we have a steerer in Rabbi Yehuda. At the bottom of the page, we said what? We're going to turn around and say Rabbi Yehuda says you can use a goy. On the other hand, Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot use a goy. It says Ataz Brisi Tishmar. Only you could do it, not them. The answer was the one who says that you can't use a goy, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And the other one is Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, a regular Tana. And that's therefore it's not the same. There's no steerer in Rabbi Yehuda. So it comes out. Rav Meir says you can never use a goy because he's going to kill the child or sever the child unless he's a professor. But we're not getting into the professor thing now. Therefore he says you can't use a goy at all. Rabbi Yehuda says, and therefore he says what? He says right. He says like we switched it around. Rav Meir says you can't use the goy. You should use the kuti. Rabbi Yehuda says. You should use the goy and not the kuti. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use a goy. That's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. But the other Rabbi Yehuda says you could use a goy. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reason? It says Lashem himo. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say? In other words, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says you have to use a Jewish person to mal because there's Lashem himo. It's got to be Lashem. It has to be Lashma. Or that's really not Rabbi Yehuda, but the goy, but rather about the kuti. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say? Right, we said before, my time Rabbi Yehuda bar plukta Rabbi Yossi, he says that a kuti is no good because a kuti is doing l'shem har grizim, and the pasuk says l'shem himo, you got to do l'shem. Rabbi Yossi himo yimo means that you should circumcise in any event. It's not. Hashem. What does he do with l'shem himo? Lahu v'pesach. It says also pesach l'shem himo yimo kol zachar. The Hashem is going on. The pesach has to be l'shma. Pesach l'shma is no good. What does Rabbi Yehuda says himo yomo anyway? The rhetorical Lashon B'nei Adam. Torah speaks that way. It's a double Lashon, but the truth is that doesn't mean that you can use a kuti because a kuti doesn't do it lishma. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda Beloy says you have to do it lishma. All right, we'll pick it up from the Idmar tomorrow. Mitzvah. Have a good day. Pardon?
The guy that's also not lishma.
He's not doing lishma. And Achanami, so Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use it. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says you can't use a goy. If you hold in need lishma, according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, you can only use a Jew because a guy won't do lishma. According to Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, you can use a goy. It doesn't have to be lishma. And according to Rav Meir also, Rav Meir's problem with the goy is that he might kill the baby or sever the penis. Problem is not the lishma. Rav Meir doesn't seem to hold lishma, nor does Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi. Rabbi Yehuda, right? But he says by a kuti, the issue was that he said that Rabbi Yehuda, the one in Har Grizim, Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use that because he holds it has to be lishma. That's Rabbi Yehuda, but that's why he said that a kuti is no good. The one who said that a goy is no good, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Thank you.